So you send me note board. We are waiting at 4.
We are wait for you.
3:55.
All right. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to White House Vibes. Another Sunday evening where we're going to deep dive into what's happening in Jamaica. Gentlemen, this week a poll came out showing that Maxine is here. Welcome, Sister Maxine.
Hi.
Yeah, well, we'll heal up everyone. Welcome. Yeah, I was saying before Maxine joined us, is that a recent poll was released this week in Jamaica, and it showed that 60% of the population think that the country is going in the wrong direction. On the other hand, that same poll revealed that only 8% of the people are really concerned about the issue of corruption. I don't know what that means for the People's National Party, but from what we have seen, the PNP to me seems to be in a holding position. They're waiting for the Jamaica Labour Party to mix up and mess up and create their own problems. Personally, I don't think that that's the right way to go in terms of the political organization of Jamaica. So today we want to explore what more can the PNP do to empower the Jamaican people and remove this GLP government from office. What more? Or should they just buy their time and wait until September, 11 months from now, for the general election? Those are some questions I think we should look at. I want to hear from the panelists if they have anything that they also want to discuss, but that's one thing I want to look at. Okay, so let me start with John. John, what's your view? Can you fix your camera for me, please? Now we're not seeing it. It's your ballad now, and we are all
because I'm looking at the polls. I'm looking at the polls that you just referred to. Yeah. And before I give any comment, I would like to scan these polls. I'm a strong believer in polls.
Okay.
Science is what I believe in. So before I give any comment, for example, I'm looking at the first page which says Mark Golding closes favorability gap to Andrew Holness.
What date are you looking at?
I'm looking at April, the latest one, which is even later.
The latest
than
one is this.
We're in October, John.
We are in October, John.
No.
We are in October.
Let me repeat. The one that I'm looking at is April. Oh, October.
Yeah.
John.
The current poll is October.
My apologies. It said on the heading the latest poll. So go ahead, call somebody else while I find the latest poll.
Patrick, do you think the PNP should be doing more to mobilize Jamaican people? And if so, what exactly should they be thinking about demonstration rather than moving a motion in the parliament? What do you think the PNP should be doing right now?
No, I think what the PNP should be doing is what they should have been doing all along. Is working more with the people on the ground, right? In terms of preparing them and engaging them, right, in what's happening, and really, developing something based on the work on the ground, and not just focused on the government and the antics where they're going on with, because they can only do that for so long. I mean, elections are due by next year, right? Very little you can do to speed up that process.
Are you sure about that? You said very little they can do to speed up the process. Are you sure?
There's nothing you can be sure about in this season.
Nothing.
Nothing you can be sure about.
Which is the latest?
John, you want to come back?
October? Sorry.
October, yeah. October is the latest poll.
Oh, come on, can't find that.
You have to go into the Gleaner. Lass, what's your take?
I'm not surprised that the poll shows that not a lot of people is, concerned about the corruption, the situation where that is concerned in the country. The thing is, as I've stated a number of times, that corruption, a lot of people don't pay too much attention to the talk and the banter between the two political parties as far as it comes to corruption, because a lot of them, it's like a spectacle for both. It has been a spectacle for both parties over the years, where they use the whole issue of corruption to throw stones at each other. And it becomes, especially that stone throwing becomes especially intense when it becomes near to an election. But what usually happens is that these accusations and weaponizing of corruption between the two parties, they always settle down after the election cycle, or when the other party comes into power, and nothing usually comes of it. And what we see happening is that despite the talk by these politicians about corruption, they never usually put anything in place in the ministries to stem the corruption, in the offering of contracts, right? They do nothing. It's so a lot of people seem to take this talk of corruption as just stone throwing.
Well, I must make a correction there. I must make a correction, last, because I'm looking at the data now, and what it says that 36.6% identify crime, violence, and corruption in high places as a major concern. So it's not 8; it's 36% of the population.
But even so, Mikey, it is still with the, when you go on social media amongst the politically conscious so-called people, they are talking about corruption. The party people are talking about corruption, but it does not seem to be affecting the ordinary voters, because if the way people are talking, you're hearing about corruption, you would have expected that when the polls came out that shows the ranking of the political parties, you would have expected to see that corruption would have caused a major difference in the support within the country for the political parties, and that is not showing right now. The Blue Dot poll that came out about 2 or so weeks ago showed the parties still neck and neck, almost, despite the accusations against the current government and the accusations against the prime minister. I mean, it is showing that people don't take this thing as seriously as most of us would like to see.
I would agree with you because it's 36%, rough, a third of the population. I'll agree with you. But let me hear from Sister Maxine, because she's a very insightful person and she knows what's going on. John, I don't want to see your ballad, no, John. It's just your ballad I'm seeing. Can we see
Well,
your
you
face?
don't need, you don't,
We
because I'm
want the
trying to
people
find the
watching,
information.
the people I'm watching, they need to see your face because you're a very handsome guy. So you need to let the people see your face. Sister Maxine, what's your take?
Maxine, here, this man a chat foolishness.
No, we need to see your face right in your ballad. I met the people them say we have some handsome individuals on the platform.
But what I did notice this week is that social media has a lot to do with perception, a lot to do with it, because I saw where the prime minister, in the whole hype of the issues against him, went international, right?
Yeah.
Then when he came back in, it was just all about it was almost like you were in a campaign mode, because it was all about infrastructure, movement, it's just non-stop visuals. That I just said, wow, they have a strong public relations campaign to shift the focus, right? I don't think the PNP or the other side, if it's two sides campaigning, that they had, in fact, what I saw, which I'm going to ask a question, is that FinSAC was thrown out, and the PNP, because it seemed to just relate to Omar Davies and PJ Patterson. And I had to be processing the information in the, like something just happened.
Yeah.
And like I said, wow, that's another PR thing came out. And then they came with Michael Phillips, who also had a charge. So from a PR perspective, I saw that the whole issue with the prime minister was diffused, right? And so when you said the poll said what it said, yes, the voter, the people would be like, okay, they would be contemplative of what is really happening, because I don't know what's happening or what the what do you call it, the IC commission, and I think even what they did with the IC commission as well, because they were also making they made some statements or some pushback, on the IC people. It was just like a PR push to diffuse the issue and put the PNP on the back foot, because as you said, and your question today was about what can the PNP do in terms of policy now, to challenge what is happening, or what is being presented by the JLP as their work, not the corruption side. But, I saw the prime minister come out and saying, oh, he's hiring new national branding people to brand the country, in a different way. I mean, it was like a siege of public relations. What's behind it? I don't know, but definitely. And that's the other thing. It's not like the campaign here in America where you know that November 5th is the election and both parties are in campaign mode. And so you can, balance what is happening. This Jamaica campaign is like, oh, it's next year, it's a year away. But like I said, if something happened to overthrow the person or force an election to be called because it's not a set date, you know what I mean? So you're kind of seeing, oh, will somebody trip up themselves to make, because the election can call anytime. It has to call by the next year, September. But it can call tomorrow if there's a crisis or, So
Maxine, I want to push back on something you said. You said the issue is kind of diffuse. I disagree with that argument because this week the Integrity Commission went before the Parliament, and it seemed like Justin Panton was very dismissive of what the GLP said, member of Parliament were saying. To the point where he said, "Listen, I decided to walk with my water, because I don't understand the type of water I'm serving at the Parliament." So there's a pushback, there's a resistance.
There's a resistance from, last week I wasn't on the program, but I was listening to Anthony Hilton, basically saying, well, oh, this is before the court. And, there's nothing much that they can do to go on like march or anything because the person who is accused of or questionable, the court now has the issue. And then the court process seems like Jamaican court.
Let the process play itself out.
Yeah, but that is a diffuse of time, meaning to say, like, it's not anything immediate. It's not like, okay, the court has 30 days to answer, you don't have a sense of understanding. So that's why I'm saying the PR that came out in the last week was enormous. From the Prime Minister and in general, and then the response or the platform for the PNP, I'm not clear. I did see some kind of economic things coming out, but it didn't, it wasn't like it's an agenda. It's just, kind of shallow. Like they talk about they're going to do it with ganja or with school teachers or something like that, but it wasn't like it's a campaign. You understand?
Yeah.
It was kind of, so I could understand the polls. That's what I said. From my perspective, I think if somebody polled me last week, I'd be wondering,
Okay.
especially with the FinSAC thing, because I didn't understand it, but it seemed negative to the PNP. And it seemed like a thing like, oh, the JLP had to fix what the PNP left. And, it was like scribbling, like what last saying, between the political class. And then you were wondering,
Okay. I saw that thing, that the FinSAC thing, and I thought it was a big attempt to shift the topic, to something, because they know people are still concerned. The FinSAC episode is still, a bone in the people's mouth right now, and people want to get and understand as to what exactly happened. But let me turn to John. John, you have heard last Maxine and Patrick. What's your take, my brother? You think it's a distraction, divide and rule approach? What's your take, bro?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about what you said first of all, and I think one of the
we're not
biggest.
seeing your face, John. We're not seeing your face. Yeah, yes, that's much better.
Yes. My point is this: I haven't had a chance to look at the post carefully. However, I do have an opinion as to some of the reasons why we have that type of view in the public. And the first reason is corruption is acceptable, quote unquote, in the minds of the Jamaican public. In other words, this is a situation. The word that I want is like murder. If we say murder or police brutality is acceptable among the youth, is because they don't see, there's nothing, no experience that make the people feel that police don't behave any different in the communities. And it's the same thing with corruption in the Jamaican society. I think there is a high level of
tolerance.
I'm sorry?
Tolerance, high level of tolerance for corruption.
Tolerance. Yeah, that's not the word. There's a word that they use in America, which I just can't remember, but it's like tolerance. High level of tolerance. So if 36% say that it is important, even though that is only a 1/3, is because I think there is a high level of tolerance among the people across lines, etc., where it's known. So what? If you get what I'm saying. So what? So I don't surprise with that. I'm really looking at the other information that it tells us. And the one that I'm very interested in is the level of high level of undecided among the voters, according to this last, is about another 1/3 that is undecided between. I'm not sure because I haven't had a chance. You're calling me out about my head, and I cannot look at the paper. When I put the paper, it blocks my camera. But the point is, really and truly, we should be informed by something. And the poll is the polls that Don Anderson does are the nearest thing to something, and the most recent one would be information that would help us have a better view of where the people are at and the issues and positions that the people are currently taking. I'm not surprised at this, and the other reason is not everybody immediately grasps. When we talk about corruption in Jamaica, we think about it in terms of a behavior by a politician or by a businessman, or in the bank is like the man thief Usain Bolt money. The bank thief Usain Bolt money. What we're not thinking about is how that thieving impact everyday people in their life, how it impact the building of the schools, how it impact the salary that has to be paid to police, how it impact the civil service and the way that the civil service inefficiency operates, how it impact the building and rebuilding of the road system, the bus. Well, we don't have public bus service anymore. But it's to make the connection between how corruption, if we went through the newspapers for the last 20 years, identify the amount of corruption over the last 20 years and say, this is the total money that has been thief out of the government coffers, could build X amount of hospitals, could build X amount of primary school, etc. That would make the issue more concrete. I don't think that's how Jamaica. Before I came to America, I never think of corruption in that way. I used to think of corruption as a behavior. Thieving is a bad behavior, but a behavior nonetheless. Not everybody necessarily see the practical impact of what it does to our everyday life. And those are just 2 points that I think have relevance on why it's not as critical or seen as important, which the polls are confirming.
Well, let me throw this question. Let me throw this question out there. I understand what you're saying, but should that excuse the PNP from mobilizing the Jamaican people? Because that's one topic that you could mobilize around, the whole corruption.
Yeah, and if I may, just since I was talking, I'm going to take the liberty of saying one more thing, which is the PNP's response, not just to that, but to everything. To everything. I think that on the corruption, the biggest problem that the PNP has is not just the government's response or the prime minister's response to it, which is to take it to court. And what that does is give him a stay. It gives him some time. It gives him some cover. But the PNP's biggest problem is that within the ranks of the PNP, there are enough people who have done the same thing, who have the same, them tarnish with the brush of corruption. They are still in the party and they have never been called out or disciplined or expelled. So this problem is a fairly wide problem in the Jamaican context, unfortunately. The other reason is education is not going on in the PNP. By education, I mean
political education.
Yeah, that's a way. The term political might be understood to mean GLP and PNP education. I think you mean what I mean, which is education as to the value, the impact of corruption. Let me give an example. I watched this seminar on Saturday of the bringing back of Marcus Garvey's body to Jamaica. And we had very good speakers speaking there, both of whom I know. And, they are intellectuals, and that's not a problem. I am an intellectual too. But what it shows is that the issue of Marcus, the spirit of Marcus Garvey, just like the message of Bob Marley, is as old as Jamaica. Is as old because they're dealing with the oppression of Black people. And despite that, today's youth don't know the importance or don't grasp the value or see the value of Marcus Garvey. Having statue, every now and then you have somebody speak and make a speech about it is not sufficient. It has to be connected to the realities of Jamaica, and those realities have not changed since the abolition of slavery. They have not. And the reason why Bob Marley music ring throughout the world is because him singing about things that every human being can relate to, even when it's not happening in your country. You can relate to it because it is something you can, every day you turn on the news, you see it. In our country, it happening. In America, it happening because there is black people. And the blacker you are, the backer you are. So what I'm saying is, it's this, the consciousness, for want of a better word. The PNP is not doing anything to educate that. I mean, it's not enough to have the way the state system is set up, the schools, the curriculum, as well as the television. Why is there not something about black oppression every single day on every single platform in Jamaica? Because it's not treated that way. The people that run things are the same people that run things before. The red people and the white people, they're not going to put fire to something. It's Rasta that carry that torch. And therefore, it's not treated with the same importance. I told you before, Nita, sorry to be talking long. When I was teaching this at the school, Selassie School, I started a thing called the Black History Club. And the only thing I did was to bring Rasta from the Rasta man them was out on the field. Every day they beating drum.
Yes, while you were at Selassie High School.
Yeah, right? While I was at Selassie, Rasta was out on the field. And in the school, the children used to ask me, why Rasta have locks? Why Rasta smoke weed? Why Rasta do this? Why Rasta do that? Mr. Ross, I can't answer those questions, but I can bring Rasta into the classroom to answer. And when I bring the dreads into the classroom to answer those questions, the classroom ram, there's not enough space for the youth them to sit down and listen. So it's a reality. We have that reality. We have the ability to address it, but it's not being addressed. History is not taught with the current reality in Jamaica. When I use the word history, I mean not just in the school, but the practice is there's everyday experience that show how black people are in the back and brown people hang around and white people stand in the front, because that's how the society run. Less so today, but it's still going on. And there is a change, but the change is not sufficient. So I'm saying that the state is, until the state is run, by state I mean the institutions like the TV and the newspapers and all of the press apparatus, and the curriculum is run by everyday black people, that problem will never be solved. It will always be something that we marvel over and we look and we talk about why this and why that. But the only way to solve it is like in every case where the bottom people come to the top. That is how it's going to solve. Until that day, education have to continue. And by education, I mean PNP. Why don't they do more of it? It's because the middle class people run PNP. Red people like me run the PNP. And the reality is those people are not focused on getting Black voices at the front of the Jamaican education or political system. Them don't even bring Rasta into the mainstream. Them don't. Neckleford do more to bring Rasta into mainstream. Academic man. Those people, Neckleford, bring Rasta into the mainstream and help me understand what Rasta is.
But John.
So that is my piece.
Last, go ahead.
So the first question to you, John. Are you saying that is what is needed right now to by the PNP to make up ground in amongst the people and to get more reaction to the corrupt against the corrupt government that we are seeing right now? Are those recommendations the answer to that?
Well, in a general sense, the answer is yes. But the people are not in a position to run things right now. Where we need to, what we need to do, and what the PNP, if it was, you asked, the question that was asked is, can the PNP do more? And my answer is yes. What is the more? The more is education.
But you talk about
what end? What?
That's the thing. And you know, you ramble on and by the time we get to where we are now, it's almost like, you know, it's hard to pick and choose what, you know, from what you said, or to understand what you said, what we're really getting at. Because to me, the question has shifted, right? John is really talking about Rastafarianism and education, which is two other subjects altogether, right? That's not directly answering the question. You know, I think what happened is that John probably, you know, as need for really coordinate my ideas a little more before him really express it. But that's my takeaway from listening to him, you know. Because him ramble from one to the next, and then we get lost in terms of the question.
Gentlemen, Patrick made a statement, and I think it's only fair that John respond to what Patrick is saying. So, John, can you respond to what Patrick is saying? Patrick is saying that you shift the question. I don't think it's shift. I think it's still part of the whole.
It depends on how you look at education. If you think education is a thing that go on in school, then I would agree with you. I'm not using the term education. The PNP can do education. It doesn't require education in school. If I was a teacher, I can do my curriculum. I have some flexibility when I used to teach. The question was, can the PNP do more? The answer is yes. What can they do? Political education. And I gave an example about the position of Black people in Jamaica, because that is a big issue. It is a current issue. It's not just corruption.
So are we talking about the PR strategy? Because that's what I came, not to say that the Prime Minister's corruption issue is resolved, right? What's happening is there's a public relations campaign to capture and or shift the mind and the thinking of the people. right?
And it's
But
being successful.
Even when I glanced at the Gleaner just a while ago to make the point clearer in my head, there are no articles. The one article with the Integrity Commission is about some squabble between Justice Panton and the parliamentarians about nonsense, Wharton, who is psychologically fit because of the statements that the government has been making about the Integrity Commission. Nothing substantive about the actual report and where in the process it is, in terms of governance and the status of the prime minister or him being compromised. When I looked, there are three articles on FinSac, and there's one article on SSL that is so confusing again, because it's talking about money that SSL is getting, not for the people who have been robbed, but the people who are observing the robbery to find out who robbed who are getting millions of dollars, and they're projecting that the people who have been robbed, there'll be no money for them to get. So again, it is, what is the PR strategy, the public relations strategy, which is what I think Patrick is getting at, that the PNP will be able to mount in the face of what has been put on the table to shift the essential issue, before this IC report on the Prime Minister. What was the agenda? What was the agenda that was being presented by the PNP in relation to the need for the change of governance and more benefits coming to the people? I mean, I'm reading where Cuba has no light, the whole island of Cuba. You understand? Because of no oil and this, and I'm saying Cuba is 90 miles away. Haiti is in some serious scenario. Jamaica is in between the both of them. What is going on geopolitically, that we should be assessing? We have an election coming up in the America place that is very, it's one of the most critical elections in terms of what we're talking about, one party or the other. So what is the PR strategy of the PNP in order to deal with what has just come on the table? Because something has come on the table that has shifted the whole dynamics of the issue.
Yeah, my position now, Mikey. First, I think what has been happening with the whole issue of corruption around the Prime Minister and the GLP government is that the corruption has been a part of our political system all along. When it comes to the distribution of scarce benefits, when it comes to distribution of housing, jobs, services in the communities, the majority of Jamaicans have become used to getting these benefits with the aid of corruption in the political system. If you want a job on the road, you have to be part of some political organization, right? If you want to access certain benefits, you have to be, you're at an advantage being a part of the political system that is ruling. If you want a house, you're at an advantage if you're part of the political system. So people have become used to that over the years, and that mentality make them accept that corruption is part of the system, and them don't see nothing too tough wrong with it. An example, when Wilmington was not afraid to come out in public and state that him not gonna make no PNP access certain things if him, as long as him have the power to do it. Because him know that the GLP audience that he's speaking to accept that and accept say, I saw it go. Because the same people that tell you say the PNP, when them in a power, make it difficult for them access certain things. So that is part of the reason why there isn't. I remember years ago, there was a politician, I don't remember which politician it was, who was embroiled in some corruption issue. And he said that people don't vote for corruption in Jamaica. I don't remember which politician it was that said that. And it's a fact. People have come to accept that corruption in some form is beneficial to them. So what can the PNP do more? Because we see that the whole corruption issue and all the things that embroil the Prime Minister and all the things that embroil all the other GLP candidates, it is not turning the people against the government in a big way. What we see happening, and a lot of people has been mistaken that turn to say that the people are against the government overwhelmingly, right? What we see is a high activity amongst PNP people. Before the PNP was disorganized, they were split. Now they are more organized, they are more united, and they are making more noise. We should not take that to mean that because the PNP people are making noise, that the entire country is shifting against the government because the government is corrupt and all these other things that the government is involved with, right? So what the PNP needs to do is to continue them organization, right? Can continue trying to make more people aware of the effects of corruption, right? But the PNP gonna have to just buy them time, do what they need to do until the people become more aware, more conscious, and ready to reject the government. Outside of that, there's not much more the PNP can do, right? Because it is the people, right, who's making this decision, who to vote for, and who them have faith in. And right now, as the local government elections show, the parties are still very, very close in terms of support across the country. Right?
Patrick, do you share that view?
Little piece.
Yeah, listen, let me say this. Right, going back to the question, right? As you started. First of all, the polls is only gonna tell you so much, right? Because the results of the polls you get is based on the questions that are asked in the conduction of the polls, right? It doesn't reflect the fullness of the electorate, or the fullness of, the people's perspective, right, across Jamaica. That's the first thing. Secondly, when it comes to the work of the PNP, the work of the PNP should not be limited by listening to the polls or responding to the polls. In fact, the work of the PNP, if done correctly, right, can give you far more information than the polls can give you. Right? Because the work of the PNP is supposed to be work on the ground, which is supposed to be an ongoing work, and not just for a third of the electorate, right? But in fact, for be a national work, right? Done through organization in each and every constituency, right? Even the constituency them where them not control, right? Them still can do work in there. Them still can develop work in these constituencies because them field candidates across all constituencies. So the work always has to be in terms of engaging with the people on the ground. Yes, what we're all saying here is not all that different. The education piece is important, very important. The roles of Rastafarians play historically is important as well, right? So I'm not dissing anything that has been said. I'm just saying that we need to understand it in its perspective, right? That it really comes down to, as last clearly state, right? Organization on the ground, engagement among the people. That has to be the bedrock of the work, right? Because the people you're serving, right? As for corruption, right? That is when you look at the real role of government. Government don't have a responsibility to be corrupt, right? Or to engage in corrupt practices. In fact, that directly go against the role, what the role should be, right? Corruption is a basis for disqualification. That's what corruption is.
If proven.
Corruption, period, right? Because as far as being proven, right? Corruption speaks for itself. Corruption don't hide. Corruption can't hide, right? What clearly is happening is that the government of Jamaica repeatedly have shown that they are not about proper governing.
That's the point, Patrick.
That's it.
That's the key point. That's the key point,
don't need
Patrick.
no further proof. It's
not just this government, but the governments of the country. You're right.
Right?
It's perfect point.
I mean, going to court and all of that is just the process you take in terms of dealing with the actions. But we already know from before all of that, before you get to the court and all of that, that yes, it has been corruption. Right? It show itself with as John said, with Usain Bolt money. It show itself with the whole financial system and the way it's operating. It show up. It's not something being hidden.
But don't you think at what point the PNP will bring out the people on the streets? You know, because the salary issue.
No, but demonstrate. Again, when it comes to coming out on the streets, right? Is it that there's something to be achieved from bringing people out on the street? No. Is that what you're asking? Or is there a matter that you're saying that in order to move forward, the first step has to be, you know, you take to the streets? Because I'm not sure, you know, what it is you're really asking. If you know, if when you're asking about you know, engaging the people and mobilizing the people in that way. These are just general phrases you're using, but I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, what I'm saying, I'll give you an example. The salary increase. Ordinary Jamaicans went out on the street and demonstrate around that issue. But the PNP was missing from
how many ordinary Jamaicans, Mikey? That's the question you have to ask. How many ordinary Jamaicans? No, it's not regardless. But that will tell you. That will tell you whether or not the people is in that mood to go on the street for that particular issue. Because if you have a population of 3 million people and you have a dozen people who come out on the street to show them reaction to a particular issue, that is saying something about the mood of the people at the particular time and what the people are prepared to take on. And that is why I'm saying, in terms of what the PNP can do, the PNP can continue its organization, continue its mobilization, continue its awareness campaign, and get more and more people aware and ready and in the mood to fight for certain issues. Until that time, you can't just say, you can't just think that going out on the street should be the strategy. It has to be the strategy when the people can be mobilized toward that particular end and it can bring some progress. If the majority of the people don't think that corruption for them is that issue that should take them on the street, the PNP can take its own people on the street, but to what end?
Yeah, I don't think we want to get... Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
No, I'm just saying I don't want us to think that the hallmark of any protest or any struggle is going on the street. I think the point that I understand Lass and Patrick to be making, which I agree with, is that people are not, the mood out there is not one of going on the street. There's no question about that. However, the mood out there is always for education, is always for more knowledge, is always for more learning. And therefore, my biggest criticism in a time of downturn of the people in struggle, the biggest thing that is required is education. The manifesto, the news media, in whatever form, wherever, is how to bring better understanding to why things are happening that you can change.
And John,
and that's my biggest point is all about education. And I don't mean in the school.
Part of that education, John, gonna have to be that the PNP in them activities have to show that them have an alternative to whatever is happening. Alternative in ensuring that they can build better, more secure structures inside of the ministries, right? Inside of the communities, right? To ensure that no corruption and thieving of the people money take place, right? They have to ensure that they can show the people, educate the people on their proposals, right? That can show that they can bring.
But they are not doing that now.
Well,
are they?
Well, here's the thing.
I wouldn't say they're not doing that, because they need to do more of it. right? Because if you listen to the speeches at the conference, right, people will touch on various aspects of things that they want to do, but I think the PNP probably put in most of them eggs in the basket of fighting corruption and fighting around that area, because they feel that the corruption thing is so obvious that more people would jump in on the bandwagon and want to push the government out, right? And I don't think that is happening fast enough, right? But regardless of whether that is happening, these things that I'm saying, the PNP need to do it on an ongoing basis so that people see them as an alternative, right? People need to see that the PNP have an alternative to fighting crime in a very effective way. The PNP has been criticizing the GLP government around the issue of crime. How many people can say, if the PNP come into power, they are going to do this and do that, which I believe can decrease the crime rate and make the fight against crime much more effective? We need to see those kind of things.
So you agree with the argument that the PNP should be doing more then?
Of course, they should be doing more.
Okay. Patrick, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, that's precisely it. I mean, like I said, all of the relevant points have been brought out. John said it, Lass said it, Maxine said it. I mean, it's absolutely clear. It's all of that coming together, right? Because as John said, even on the education piece, it is education beyond the classroom, right? It is education as the bedrock of engagement, right? Because what happens is that it leads to better understanding. That's what it leads to, better understanding. And from better understanding comes ideas to move forward. So you don't have to have the answers precisely before you, but it's through the engagement that the answers come.
Exactly.
That's how you build the ideas.
But my point is, if I could continue, just to answer something that Maxine said, Cuba's blackout is the same as the Palestinian people blackout. The same cause, right? If you're going, I mean, those of us who have been to Cuba from student days, if we go there now, it's the same equipment around the power supply. So that must smash down. If you are in a blockade to squeeze the country to the end, that is the end result. End result is them going to have nationwide blockade, 10 million people without light. The Americans don't joke. So
it's even broader than that, John. It is even broader than that. Because let's use that as an example, right? Of what we're talking about, right? The situation with that blackout in Cuba, right, tells several stories. It tells the story about the sanctions against the Cuban economy, right? That's one. And furthermore, it is not just the long-standing sanctions. It is sanctions even expanded under the Trump government, may impose even more sanctions, right? Which the Biden government afterwards promised to pull back on some of these sanctions and still never pull back. They're still increasing pressure on the Cuban economy and on the Venezuelan economy. Venezuela is primarily the source of Cuban oil, Cuban fuel.
Are we shifting the discussion to international?
No. I'm just bringing out these points
that's what I'm about to ask.
You know, our understanding, or deeper understanding, really bring better ideas towards moving forward. Because without understanding things, you won't be able to take the necessary action, right, for bring relief. Right, so since the Cuban thing was raised in terms of that, and John chose to, expand on it, I said that, you can go even further, because it is still even deeper than that. Right, but all of these things are important factors in terms of our understanding, because this is how political parties should really take leadership, because it shouldn't be for dumb down people, but it should be for engage people and make them understand things better, so they can make better choices when they vote, and them can understand the importance of them vote, right? And government can understand the importance of the role that they must play in governing.
Right, and the question before us is whether the PNP is doing enough.
Right.
If I was to give them a score out of 10, I would give them 4. 4 in terms of what they are doing.
Elaborate, John.
Yes. Let us look at education. Tell me now. I mean, except for the annual conference, I can't speak to what might be going on, as you guys call it, the grassroots level. Because even in that situation, it's minimal. So my biggest criticism of the PNP, you don't have to have, in fact, it is not during active time you're going to have big education, even though it lends itself more when people are active. But it is during slow time you spend more effort on education. More effort. I mean, I don't know what the PNP magazine or newspaper is saying. I haven't seen one. But I can certainly look in the newspapers and see what they are doing. I don't see nothing of substance in terms of quote-unquote education. I don't see it. And Maxine is absolutely right. The government PR is to sidetrack, to bury any criticism of it. That is what every criticism party in government always find means. The way that she call it PR, I don't mean PR where them hire somebody. I mean all of the strategies to distract, to make people forget, etc., to undermine, to go to court. All these things are distractions. What is the PNP doing to bring attraction to these things? I don't see it. And I don't believe that it's, I'm not saying they're doing nothing. I'm saying on a score out of 10, I would give them a 4.
But here's how I would agree with you, John. I would agree with you like this. You're not gonna necessarily see everything that the PNP is doing right on the ground. But here's how you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it in terms of the shift now with the polls. That's how you're gonna see it. Right? Because what happens is the only thing
you should see it.
Right, absolutely. Right? Because the only thing that can bring a real massive shift in the poll, is the work that is done on the ground, That's the only thing that's gonna change that.
But the use of the word work on the ground, I use 90% of that work on the ground is education in this time.
Yeah, well, that's the bedrock of it, as I said before, right? Because that's where it begins. But it don't begin and end there, right? It begins there, but it continually is gonna expand once you stay true to the work, right? Because like I said, you have all spelled it out clearly. Let's said it in terms of the underground organization, right? I mean, we know what that looked like from back in the day when we were engaged in it, right? We know what that looked like.
So where does the PNP get their resources from to do organizational work? Because I just looked at the Instagram pages of the Prime Minister versus the Instagram pages of Mark Golding, right? Just looking at it to see how it looks there and how it looks for Mark. And obviously, the government, I also looked at Daryl Vaz's page and, then I look at Angela Brown Burke. I was just comparing what what is being projected. So clearly the government has the government budget and the government access to cash, to care, to get into corruption problems, yes, but also to get into financing and putting across what they're doing. You just say pure activity, obviously, perception. And the PNP has little or no activity. And I don't, when I run through the pages, Damon Crawford page has the most interesting projection and look. And going to what we're saying here, you don't get a clear agenda. And then I'm wondering to myself, well, where are the resources? Because if it's a game, like if you're competing, you have to have money, you have to have cash to clear, right?
But it's the same principle as running a business. It's the same principle.
So where does the PNP, in terms of the education, the public education, the strategies, etc., what is the source of financing? And I'm curious. I don't know, as you were talking about being active in previous years, etc., etc. I don't know in the context of Jamaica, where does the opposition party in opposing
it's the same as with anything else, Maxine, right?
Where do they get the money from? Where do they get the money?
Yeah, it's the same as with anything else. If you're gonna set up a business, for example, right? It means that you have to build an infrastructure for the business.
Yeah.
Now, this infrastructure that you build for the business is the same thing we call the organization of the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is that structural development of the business. Is that building a structure that's leading to the development of the business, right? And one element of that structure is the financial structuring of the business, right? Now, with building the financial structure of the business, if it's a business that's gonna produce goods, right? Then you know that the resources is gonna come from the sale of those goods, right? Similarly, right? If it's a business that's gonna produce services, it's gonna come from the sales of those services. So if it's a business that is a non-profit, for example, it gonna still have a financial infrastructure, because that financial infrastructure is gonna be one of fundraising, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one that would most correspond with the political party is the one of fundraising. They're gonna have a financial structure, right, which is gonna involve some form of fundraising, right? It's gonna lead to the development of or they lead to the building of funds, right? So it's just like anything else, right? It is really in terms of how you set up the organization, or you build on the organization, right? Or you structure the organization, right, to lead to the development.
Can you bring all that argument back to related to the PNP?
I just did.
I asked, where's the money for the PNP to run their campaign? Where does it come from? The members? Is it the people of the PNP party?
No,
not just members. It comes from support.
These
support.
People have wealthy people in them organization. They get support from business people, all different sources. Yeah. They have their needs. Them have dues, them have everything. But what I want to ask the panel, do you believe that the majority of Jamaicans see the PNP as an alternative in terms of crime, them standard of living, developing the infrastructures of the country and the communities? Do you believe that at this time people in the country really see the PNP as an
alternative
that they can vote for at this time?
We don't see that. Which goes back to John's point, right? When John mentioned about out of giving them a mark out of 10, 4. Because what happened is that you're not seeing it, and it's not reflecting itself even in other polls. It's not reflecting itself in any way. Right? We know that we know at one point there was a frustration that people never see a difference between the PNP and the GLP. Them just see the two of them as, none no better than the other. Right? There's no mark
when you listen to spokespeople,
there's no mark difference from that now.
When you listen to the spokespeople and the economy, when you listen to the PNP spokespeople and the economy and crime and education and community development, do you get the feel that yes, there's a big difference where we need to recognize and make that shift? Do you think the people of the country are seeing that, saying it's worth leaving Andrew at this time because we see a big thing coming, big improvements in the situation where crime is concerned, big improvement in them standard of living, big improvement in the education system? Do you believe the country is seeing that?
Not across the board, but you see pockets
at this
of
time.
it. You see pockets of it because the work will vary from one politician to the next, right? You might find that in a certain constituencies, right, the PNP structure and an organization is better than it is in another constituency, right? So you see pockets or reflections of that. You see, so of course it's like the trend begins, right, with seeing them pockets of change, all right, or pockets for change, but you don't see it across the board nationally.
So is it that the how it is presented must be in relation, because I was looking at the messaging on the PNP side, which is seeking to say that, yes, we want advancement, but we want advancement to be more inclusive of the poorer people, or people get to advance, go up the ladder based on the policies. Whereas if you have policies to, as you know, to advance the country, where only a certain percentage or a certain part of the population is making the great profits versus the masses of the population, is that where the analysis is? Meaning that, yes, the country is advancing, but what is one policy versus the other policy? I mean, is it one that you advance with the people and the other that you advance and then it will trickle down to the people from the people who automatically are getting the rewards? Because clearly, you know, as you say, if you look at Jamaica, you go there, it's everything is being built. This is, you know, it's not a society that is stagnating business wise, but is, you know, is the messaging between the parties about the price that the majority people are paying, which is the price in, is this why crime and all of these things are nipping at the progress? Because the policy and how they're being attended to is what's feeding these, you know, these situations. So therefore you need a more broad-based economic development. I mean, is this where the lines of, as the question says, can the PNP do more to protect the Jamaican people? Is it the economic norms, you know, like what is this protect the people? Is it about their advancement versus another policy where no advancement and these critical things like crime and violence are, you know, illiteracy, etc., you know, what's happening to our education system, what's happening to our
That's what I'm trying to
medical
understand.
system.
Well, here's the thing about that though, Maxine. Everything is the economy. Because everything impacts the economy. Right? What we view as the economy is really what's on paper in terms of the numbers, right? And the analysis of the numbers. But it's everything that contributes to the economy. Crime impacts the economy, right? Education impacts the economy. Business development impacts the economy. Poor development impacts the economy. Everything impacts the economy. The economy basically is the way we live. That's what it is.
Right. So what are the choices between the two parties in relation to the economy? Because ultimately then the differentiation as to why one should stay and one should go, or one, you know, is based on how that economy is reflected in the majority of the people, or the, you know, the working class, the poor, etc. Is this how the politics of Jamaica is shaped? You understand what I'm saying? So at this point, we have a JLP government that is putting forward economic policies that is being critiqued, you understand, as not benefiting or, you know, leading to corruption, only, you know, XYZ, but coming down to the people now, the people that make up the society, as to why I should choose you or why I'm not going to choose you, because there's no effect, because the crime comes from the economy. You understand, the policy that you have that doesn't allow the people to grow and to advance, then that is what fuels crime. People are not.
That's the corruption we're talking about.
Right. So I'm saying is the messaging. That's what we're coming to what the PNP should be doing more to protect, and or why they aren't advancing, or why there's a question. Right. So that's why I said, is it the PR? Because sometimes you can be doing things right, but you're not able to put out your voice. So therefore it coming like you're not doing nothing.
Well, that might be it too. That might very well be it as well. That might be that, the PNP is not reflecting enough, the work that they are doing, right? For us to understand it differently. But from where we are, as John said, he's not seeing it. And that's clearly because, like you said, maybe, there's not enough being done to show up the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we have this constitutional reform that was supposed to be an empowerment of the people from the crown and people's rights, etc., where people are clamoring for a better ability to earn from this. No, what I'm saying is that the issue, I'm not even clear on the issue anymore as to where the constitutional reform that is really supposed to be benefiting the country, the resources of the, why we're trying to get rid of the crown or whatever, it couldn't be for good looks. It must be like we want to be more successful with ourselves, and therefore our development is related to our being in charge, right? So if we're discussing this and all of a sudden it's not on the table because the governing parties or it's no longer important because, you don't, it's not about the people questioning governance and making their economy more responsive.
But here's what I would say about that, Maxine, specifically, right? As it relates to the Constitution. That fundamentally is where most of the education needs to be done, right? Because that is where there's more misunderstanding around the Constitution than anything else. Yet the Constitution really forms the basis, or is supposed to form the basis for our development. It's supposed to form the basis, right, for the development, even of our own understanding. Because before we can develop, we have to understand what we're really developing, right? And our Constitution does not reflect that, right? And it does not reflect it for several reasons, right? And that is where we get into the education behind it. So therefore, it's no wonder nothing happens on that front, where you see very little being said about the Constitution, or it only arises when they want to, put something forward. They have some ulterior motive. And as it stands now, a corrupt government can lead to constitutional change.
Well, I mean, the most critical, like you said, is the PR again, because the idea that the Prime Minister would be challenging not only the specifics of the Integrity Commission that was developed to deal with this problem. And yes, he's going to court to remove a critical provision. It's the same thing in the constitutional discussions. That then, you understand, you the people, this is almost like, oh, we're worried about him, this monetary thing. But the most egregious part is that, oh, you develop a policy and you hire people to investigate and to make sure the lines are drawn, and then you are going to court to remove a provision within
it's all distraction. I wouldn't try to make
no, I'm not saying that it's distraction. I'm not saying that.
I'm saying that.
Distraction how? For me, the person.
Because again, the reason for the PM doing that, right, is for his own self-defense. Right? It is to try to justify his own actions. That's really what he's trying to do.
I'm having enough time. For my saying, I can't do nothing because I'm testing.
What is happening?
Mikey?
He seems frozen.
I am frozen.
But your voice isn't.
No, I am frozen, so...
But we can't hear you.
Yeah. I am frozen, my brother. Listen, I don't think we can... I think this discussion about the PMP will have to be ongoing. I think the focus of the PMP right now is selling Mark Golding to the Jamaican people. Policy-wise, I haven't seen anything that one can say this is the definite policy of the People's National Party. Yeah, I think the priority is selling Mark Golding. But I think we should also look at what the PMP is doing in social media. It's a very important space, and it seems like the PMP has a lot of bloggers and what have you pushing their agenda. So I think this have to be a continuous discussion to understand the PMP.
I think if next week, Mike, you could we could research someone that overviews the social media space.
Yes.
And give an opinion.
Yes.
On what both parties are doing. Because ultimately, as a Rastafari, both parties were really there to diffuse the in my point of view, which is really coming up to me, is that the majority people of Jamaica have always been feared by the minority capital class. And so it's like it may have reached a critical point now. You understand that the differentiation on behalf of the people is so minute. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It's not really anything to do with party, but it has reached a point now where the actual infrastructure, the structure of how the people are supposed to survive, especially in these climatic change conditions, that overnight, you understand, there's knowledge out there that the economy is really not as, like we're in an existential crisis. Because what we see today, tomorrow, a storm can come through and lick out your whole...
Destroy everything.
Destroy everything,
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a different time for us, and I think what we're analyzing is showing that we're very close, and the people are going to have both parties accountable. You understand what I'm saying? I think that's what I'm getting at. But I think the next thing should be an analysis of the social media platforms of both parties.
Can you do that?
Yes, I mean, we can get someone to analyze it and say, what is one saying and what is the other one doing, and
that would be a good thing.
Yeah, because I think I'm sure they're listening to this program.
Despite me being frozen.
It's frozen.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah. I want to thank the panelists, for this discussion. Certainly, we have to keep the dialogue going. I know people in Jamaica have the same concern that we have as to what the PNP is doing. We hear a lot of noise, but in terms of policy, we're not hearing too much. So can we continue this discussion going forward, looking at the PNP and the GLP, what they are doing?
Certainly. That's why we're here.
All right. So on that note, again, I want to thank every one of you. I want to thank the listeners, and remember to like and share this space. We need to get the likes up to 5,000. That's what we're aiming for. And I hope each of you is also forwarding the link to your friends and tell them to join us on Sundays. By the way, daylight saving time is coming to an end pretty soon. So, guys, sistering, make sure you check your calendar. All right?
All right, bless.
Yeah.
Until next week, be good. Walk good.
Take care.
Yes, thank you very much.
Tell everybody how they.
All right. All right, cool.